just a little bit of framing. Of course, Levi's, one of the most oldest, trusted, most well-recognized brands in the world. And with the topics of innovation and sustainability, of course, there's a lot of innovation that has taken place. I just wanted to quickly touch upon that, just to give a bit of flavor to the room. So, flagship initiative in 2011 when it comes to maximizing water efficiency, and as we all know, water is used in high amounts when it comes to production of denim and conventional cotton products. So to move away from that so many years ago is definitely something that was sending a great signal to the industry about the need to minimize resource extraction and to just think about things in a different way. Levi's have moved away from chemical use in the treatment process to exploration of plant-based dyes, and then more recently, more circular innovations when it comes to the iconic 501s. So that's just a little bit of some of the sustainable innovation space. Now, I just wanted to start with you and your role. Now, you are a trained fashion designer. You've served in academic faculty roles in the past. So please, could you tell the audience, what do you do?
What do I do? First of all, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I appreciate that. Yes, I am a trained fashion designer. I did drop out of the industry for a time because it was a difficult industry to be in, as you sort of, with emerging conscience around consumption and sustainability, it felt like the wrong place for me. So I went to academia, thinking I would be more effective in that capacity. But the opportunity to teach 6 students at a time versus trying to realign a corporation or realign an industry, though that is a lofty and somewhat arrogant goal, I got a call while I was a teacher, while I was a professor at Washington University in St. Louis. I got a call from Levi's asking me to come out to San Francisco and do cool shit. And I said, I can't, I'm still teaching. And they're like, well, you do both. We'll pay for it. We'll send you back and forth every other week. We'll let you do the work in academia you need to do, and as long as you come here and also do some cool stuff. So that's what talked me back into the industry, and it made all things possible from there. Working at a company that is somewhat a little fearless and can be, when appropriate, indifferent to market demand, when in pursuit of profit through principle. I've had this amazing job. As a designer, to be global head of product innovation and design innovation, as well as some collection design as well. I get to do all these great experiments and still teach. Right after I get done here, I go home. Have a little project over the weekend, but then next week after that, I go out to an HBCU, a historically black college, called Clark Atlanta University, to wrap up a 3-year teaching engagement where we've been bringing the resources of Levi's to bear on the education of young black creative talent to try to create some equity and access for marginalized communities in the United States to come into the industry, at the same time teaching them about principles of sustainability far earlier in their journey than they might otherwise have exposure to that concept. And so I get to do all these cool things at Levi's, including mess around with the 501, which is, you would think that after 150 years, there's not much left to do on it. But what it is an amazing template of expectation. Yes, you can design the 501. You cannot make it any weaker. You cannot make it less comfortable. You cannot make it harder to produce. You cannot compromise the consumer experience in any way. Go ahead, design into that. And realizing that it is by design into constraint that real innovation can happen. So, if I may, describing things like our plant-based 501, which is an attempt to decarbonize the materiality of the gene by pursuing entirely plant-based componentry. Like even the leather patch that appears leather is mirum, which is all plant material. The dye is all plant-grown indigo from a company that Levi's actually took an equity stake in supporting. Even the print on the interior of the garment is carbonized wood waste. So we've completely realigned the materiality, and of course, 100% organic cotton for the exterior. Concurrent with that, we've got the circular 501, which is, rather than a natural cycle, it takes a technical cycle at addressing waste and recovering old garments, turning them into new fibers by working with Renewacell to chemically deconstruct and reconstruct the cellulose into new fiber and blending that into the 501 shrink-to-fit denim. And
these are all really great signals being sent to industry as a whole that an iconic item, an iconic product can really still be innovated using new technology with the planetary boundaries in play
Yep. Yep.
as well as your customer base.
And to me, the real success is when the consumer accidentally buys it without knowing that they're wearing a piece of technical innovation, and not until they're sitting on the toilet and happen to be reading the collateral printed on the interior, do they have any idea that the garment they're wearing has actually been confirmed as not just of second-generation material, but viable for third generation, because we've redeployed it and tested it through Renewacell to confirm that, in fact, yes, it is truly circular product. And those sorts of opportunities to spend all that time and energy designing invisibly and to realign one's design practice away from designing for attention and truly designing for value. And that is, I think, it's a very special and unique feature of being a designer at Levi's. I just got back we just opened a new exhibit at Mudec in Milan for Design Week. Design Week is celebrating newness and celebrating all this great new sofa, great new credenza, great new light fixture, all the new things that really, a newness in spaces where a sofa can be 100 years old, a light fixture can last forever, right? And at this great celebration of newness, we brought the oldest pair of jeans in the world and presented it in this gallery exhibition. We have a 147-year-old pair of jeans that could be worn today, and really presenting as a design target, as a design goal, invisible design that lasts forever, as an alternative to this paradigm we live in now, which is to design for immediate attention and ephemeral attention.
And that's something that you call designing for future vintage,
right,
specifically. So, and that to me suggests that as a business, decisions are being made on materiality, on construction, on the durability aspect. So how does that all play into a circular future for Levi's and the products that you're creating?
But the circular challenge is technically quite difficult, and there are ways of making product that can be purely recovered, right, easily recovered and turned into new product. But to make it as strong as a conventional piece of product, to make it as lasting as a conventional piece of product, to make sure it's tear strength, it's tensile strength, it's abrasion resistance, it's wet crocking, it's dry crocking, all of the product integrity metrics by which we assess a conventional pair of jeans has to be the minimum standard for the circular pair of jeans. And that's a tall order when you have a brand that's built on the two lines of stitching across the back pocket to make this little arch, the arcuate. Do that out of 100% cotton and then rub it 30,000 times with a piece of fabric and see if it can hold up as a pure cotton solution. And those challenges are difficult to overcome, but necessary. But to be able to come out and say that this pair of jeans, right, my favorite pair of 501s, is absolute 100% cellulosic materiality and confirmed viable for third generation redeployment through Renewacell's recovery system. And y'all wouldn't know it because it's indistinguishable from the familiar. That is the way for us to approach sustainability, is not to try to announce it, not to try to declare it or brag about it, but to simply try to integrate it into our practice as much as possible in a way that conforms with the integrity of the product and the expectation of the consumer as we know it.
And then in the boardroom, then how does the financial viability when it comes to the R&D department and innovation, how does that translate?
I'm just a designer. No,
I feel like you're more than that.
But sometimes being just the designer, you can get away with some sort of heretical declarations around degrowth and well, what if we didn't make things, right? Being a designer, it's a very unfortunate analogy that one should never make to one's boss. But I think if we think about the archetypes presented in King Lear, right? There's the jester, and there's that old blind king who needs someone to tell him the truth. And the truth can be unpleasant, and the truth can get your head taken off but not the jester. The jester gets away with it because he's the jester. And again, in this analogy, I'm the jester, and of course, that's why I don't like to use it very often because bosses don't like to be referred to as old blind kings. But it really is by being that provocative, irresponsible voice in the room that the real ideas can get out there. Because fundamentally, there's no way growth at the current pace can continue when the value of an acre yield of arable farmland in Pakistan will eventually be worth more than that same acre's yield in cotton. Eventually, it will have to happen. And so there has to be someone talking about the truth. At the same time, the business needs people talking about the business as well. And I think it is the role of the designer in many cases to be that, to make the uncomfortable joke that no one wants to laugh at.
It's being the provocative person
Yeah.
in the boardroom when it comes to growth in a finite world.
Yeah, but
overproduction.
Imagine a chief supply chain officer talking about, what if we didn't make so many things?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work, but someone has to say it.
But there's an efficiency angle there,
Yeah.
right? And there's a saving of money as a result of that.
Yeah.
And how does that translate into those boardroom conversations? Is it through the jester or through...
Well, it's through the jester, but it's also through, smart, sincere, authentic advertising. We recently had 2 years worth of campaigns around buy better, wear longer. It wasn't buy less. We weren't going to go that far, but implicit in the message is buy less. And if we can take our share of voice to influence how people compose their closet, and eventually take share of closet, and eventually re-educate the consumer around the value of lasting value, the value of clothes that transcend generation. If we can use our share of voice to bend consumer behavior, believe me, the business will accommodate that change in behavior. Right now, the change in behavior is this explosion of consumption, and the business is going to accommodate it. But if we can subvert that message and get a truly authentic, collaborative voice out there that says, hey, maybe think about that first. Don't buy it now. Buy it tomorrow if you're still obsessed with it tomorrow, right? If you're still thinking about it when you wake up, maybe, yeah, okay, go ahead and buy it. But if you weren't thinking about it before you saw it in the store and you're just, oh my gosh, and it's on sale, you grab it, don't, right? If we think about putting out a message that says, be a little more conservative with your consumption, and if we can influence behavior, I believe the business will accommodate that. It might accommodate it through degrowth. It could accommodate it by, hopefully, market share of ethically produced product. But we have to start thinking of other levers than just rewriting the business plan, because that won't work.
And that's going to take collaboration across the industry as well. And here at the IPF, we talk a lot about the ecosystem approach, individual and collaborative effort across the whole industry. And I guess with that, there also needs to be a level of confidence in the marketplace when it comes to innovation and creating new partnerships. And some of the innovators that are running these new solutions do so through certain things called offtake agreements, which is an arrangement between a producer and a buyer to obtain some of that product in advance in terms of orders or intention of orders. One such example of a company that was using that is RenewCell that you've spoken about. And of course, Levi's one of the very first customers. And that's a very topical component at the moment with the recent news of RenewCell. But for those who don't know, RenewCell developed a new recycling process for turning cotton fabric waste and other cellulosic textiles into a viscose-grade pulp, and also scaling chemical textiles to textiles recycling for 100% recycled content. They did a lot. Things didn't go quite according to plan, but there were market forces and industry challenges around their setup. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Thank you for asking that, because there was a recent headline, rather unfortunate headline at the time of their declaration of bankruptcy in the last 2 months, about RenewCell, what went wrong. And I'm sorry, but it's my favorite pair of jeans. Nothing went wrong with RenewCell's technology. RenewCell, how did the industry go wrong? Because it's an essential technology that we have failed to embrace and activate. It produces a yield of fiber that with quality parity to version that is high enough that 40% of its 40% content integrated into a pair of jeans is indistinguishable in terms of wearing experience and quality. And it's the perfect solution in a regulatory framework where the landfilling or incineration of dead stock is or will become prohibited, and where a minimum expectation of 25% recycled content in new clothes may become a reality in Europe, perhaps not in Britain yet, and certainly not in the US yet, but it's on the horizon. And so this is the perfect enabling technology for that. And the fact that it simply opened its large facility a little too soon for those external forces to mandate its success. And it required then, instead of the regulatory mandate, it required a commitment from an industry that is trained to commit to nothing for more than 6 months. Like fall, spring, we don't decide. Right? And I mean, Levi's wakes up every morning and asks itself the question, should we buy cotton, right? Like, we are an industry that has created a financial model that purchases finished product and makes no commitment to anything that precedes that. We don't commit to the mill, certainly not to the yarn spinner, and beyond that, to the fiber spinner, beyond that further, to the pulp supplier. And so this was an amazing technology that yields great, sustainable, circularly viable product. But its financial future, its health, was predicated on the exercise of a behavior that our industry is not positioned to execute. We are not positioned there. I don't know what cost center that pre-commit would have come from, because we buy finished goods on a boat every season. And so it's this mismatch between the needs of investment banks, the needs of equity investors, the needs of new startup businesses, against the realities of how the very financial framework of our industry is set up. And that mismatch has caused one of the great potential enablers of circularity to suffer this, I hope, temporary failure, but it is in bankruptcy proceedings now. And it's just there needs to be a wholesale change everywhere. Policy, consumption, certainly purchasing practices, and certainly design behaviors as well. But it's, unfortunately, rather than it being this cautionary tale that's causing action, it's actually freezing up access to investment for sustainable material innovation elsewhere. And it's almost causing this sort of an atrophy in the space rather than being the lesson that was a call to action. And so it's just an unfortunate reality that I'm hoping that by going on at length about, and by, in my own inept way, modeling the value of, that we can reconsider how we as an industry go around funding this stuff. The fact that we have to keep amortizing the cost of all of this good R&D across individual products it's crazy.
And how many times can one recycle your pair of jeans, Paul?
Well, I gave up after 3 cycles,
okay.
But I could see it going on, and ideally it does go on and on. But there's also dignity and value in the cultivation of organic cotton, right? There's still a place for virgin materials. They should cost more, and they should be compensated more fairly. But there's room for everything, and like I was describing, a plant-based solution, which is natural cycle, this circular solution, which is more of a technical cycle. There is no one solution to address the challenges of the industry. Cottonized hemp is another great example of a grown material that can create great value for the industry that would still allow us to use virgin material, but virgin material that has much less impact in its cultivation. There's just a host of other solutions, and I think companies should really make sure that they're not creating marketing hang tags, not creating a marketing slogan around a pitch, around a single idea, understanding the complexity of the challenge and the complexity of the solution set, and respecting the intelligence of the consumer by presenting both.
And we're going to unpick a lot around regulation in all of our talks today.
I'm excited
so can you give us a flavor of what regulation, or the role of regulation to help address some of these roadblocks and help to create a more sustainable industry?
I was in the cab coming over here, and I saw a UK-based large fast fashion retailer advertising a great printed graphic tee for £2.30. I'm like, how do you? I was a little taken aback by that, but how do you tell a single working mother with 2 kids that she cannot budget herself, put nutritious food on the table by taking advantage of those low costs? So I cannot fault the consumer for always seeking that lowest price, and that it is in the nature of the business to meet the consumer where they're at. And this is by no means excusing either of the behaviors, but acknowledging that they are fundamentally the behaviors of these two entities, like the consumer and the business. This is how they are. And so we keep arguing about who's responsible for balancing us on a two-legged stool. And there's a third leg here, right? There's a third leg involved, and it's good, sensible, strictly enforced regulation. I think that says, because with this example of this pant, right? If we've demonstrated the viability of ethical manufacturing, why is it still permissible to pursue unethical manufacturing? And that there must be some sensible enforcement of responsible ethical guidelines for this industry, because otherwise we will just service the prurient need of the consumer, which is for the absolute cheapest thing that they can get.
Well, it's our responsibility as the industry to make sure that those practices are in play, and we will hear about that in the next keynote. I just want to...
But to also not to lobby against it.
Right.
Which is our nature is to lobby in favor of ourselves, which would be lobbying against enforcement of ethical manufacturing, and we need to pull back on that behavior a little bit.
And how is Levi's lobbying at the moment?
I do not participate in that function of the company's business, and I could not speak to how we engage as a lobbyist.
But there is a really large social sustainability angle to your work with the labor standards. Can you talk a little bit about how that acts out in?
We were the first company to enact a worldwide code of conduct that was intended to bring a level of labor fairness into the factory to the same level that we enjoyed it at our home offices. And we were the first to put that out into the industry. And there was an assumption that we were putting ourselves at a significant competitive disadvantage by doing so. But in fact, it actually pulled the industry along. And a lot of people actually, when I was working at other brands, I would visit a factory and they would show me their certification through Levi's terms of engagement and as assurance that they were a responsible facility. And it's that kind of responsible engagement that meant that we were not at Rana Plaza, right? The standards that we had in place kept us, could never have been in that facility because of our own expectations and our own compliance enforcement. That's not enough. We about 12 years ago launched a new program called Improving Worker Wellbeing that said the standards of fairness and the access to basic health care and fair wage that workers enjoyed inside the facility, we needed to extend that beyond factory walls and actually create mechanisms to invest in community development around the factories. And that community development is going to be guided by the workers, but executed by NGOs who are on the ground in those countries near those facilities. And factories and NGOs are not always friends. And so it was navigating those relationships to get factories to bring NGOs in as partners rather than adversaries. And that was a really big breakthrough. And what was nice about it, was great about it, was I would never have guessed what programs the workers at each facility would be voting on. I wouldn't have guessed that a community kitchen in Guatemala, Haiti, versus financial literacy education and access to financial services to the women who worked at a factory that we partnered with in Chittagong, Bangladesh. I wouldn't have guessed those. And I think we often in the Western philanthropy space presume to know what's best for people, and when in fact maybe they know better, and we were simply there to facilitate. And those sorts of relationships and the ability to help tailor to the place to meet the needs, I really enjoy that, because then I can tailor my design to the capability of the factory that's doing that good work, so that I can bring intention around community engagement into the design process. Oh, they don't make a blazer, but they know how to make a trucker jacket. How can a trucker jacket be like a blazer? Let me change my design to make sure it can comport with the capability of the factory that is doing the work in Chittagong to provide microfinance and financial literacy education and services to the women in that factory so that they are in control of their own wealth. And that brings a whole new level of intention and constraint, but creative constraint it always delivers innovation. And so that network of opportunities means that we are sort of guiding ourselves towards letting the workers guide us. And I think that engagement is important.
And that's the very human side of our supply chains we need to really, really consider all the time. So a final question, what next for Levi's?
I would like to be able to say to you all in cocktail conversation at my retirement party in 15 or 20 years, yes, I work for a company that does not use fresh water, that does not create pollution, that does not use petrochemical materials, that protects the rights and dignity of the people who make the product and serves the communities where we sell the product, and does not produce waste. None of those things can be said to be true right now. They can all be said to be our goals, and there are actions being taken to make all of them true. I believe, I'm confident that we will see them through, and that in the next 15 to 20 years, that we'll have a balanced, sustainable, ethical supply chain and consumption chain.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for letting me.